Welcome back to Spooky Stories, Unexplained Encounters. Today, we'll cover a significant UFO sighting from the 1950s when a stunned group of football fans saw unidentified objects in the sky over their stadium. I remember everything from A to Z. Ardicho Magini is quoted as saying in BBC's The Day UFOs Stopped Play. It was something that looked like an egg that was moving slowly. Everyone was looking up, and also there was some glitter coming down from the sky, silver glitter. We were astonished. We had never seen anything like it before. We were absolutely shocked. It was October 27th, 1954, in Tuscany, Italy. The Fiorentina club was playing against Pistosi, and over 10,000 fans filled the Stadio Artemi Franchi. These were rival clubs, and emotions were high. But suddenly, the ball rolled to a standstill. The players slowed and stopped. The stadium quieted. All faces turned upwards to the sky as something flew overhead. I remember clearly seeing this incredible sight. Gigi Boni, a longtime fan of Fiorentina, is quoted as saying in the BBC article, "They were moving very fast, and then they just stopped. It all lasted a couple of minutes. I would like to describe them as being like Cuban cigars. They just reminded me of Cuban cigars, in the way they look." The match was stopped for several minutes as the crowd and players stared, transfixed by the craft. Two objects, described as discs and also as cigar shapes, moved across the sky, circling over the stadium before flying off to some unknown location as UFOs commonly do. Uncommonly, however, this UFO left something in its wake. A thin, silver substance that rained down on the buildings below and stuck to trees, shingles, and roads. The craft gone, the game resumed, and Fiorentina won 6-2. The 1950s were rife with reports of UFO sightings. The world was coming off of World War II, and frightening, otherworldly things, like the atomic bomb, were quite real. During this decade, the public was introduced to the phenomena of UFOs through pop culture, sightings of flying discs becoming more and more common. In 1952 alone, the United States' Project Blue Book, a government group that studied flying saucers, received over 140 reports. Even Life magazine published a story called Have We Visitors from Space? In Italy, UFO sightings were also not uncommon. In one such case in 1950, an Italian factory worker named Bruno, working near the town of Varese, was working late. He stepped out of the factory for a moment, perhaps to catch his breath, and when he looked out, he saw some sort of circular craft with a ladder coming down from it. He then reportedly saw many small, unrecognizable creatures come out of the vehicle. He watched as they were then sucked back into the craft by some sort of unknown force. Terrified, the man ran back inside, but not before he reported being hit by a beam of light that he believed came from the creatures. The beam was strong enough to knock him to the floor. Bruno made a full report the next day, and when the authorities went out to investigate, they found burn marks in the grass and a strange green substance. Prior to seeing the unidentifiable creatures and being struck, Bruno thought that it was an experimental craft from the nearby base. But after his encounter, he wasn't so sure. Similarly, in Tuscany on that cool October day, the spectators weren't so sure what they were looking at either. "I think they were extraterrestrial," Gigi Boni is quoted as saying in the BBC article. "That's what I believe, and there's no other explanation I can give myself." Other witnesses agree. Romolo Tucci is quoted as saying in the BBC article, "In those years, everyone was talking about aliens. Everybody was talking about UFOs, and we had the experience. We saw them directly, for real." While this mass sighting holds many hallmarks of a typical encounter, there's one aspect of it that stands out: the thin silver threads that fell from the sky. The threads were described as looking like cotton, wool, or spider webs. When touched, the material would disintegrate. Yet some people were able to carefully collect samples. A journalist from the La Nazione newspaper was able to collect a swab of samples using a matchstick. He then took the sample to the Institute of Chemical Analysis at the University of Florence. There, the matter was tested. It came back that the material was boron, silicon, calcium, and magnesium. This breakdown didn't provide any conclusive answer as to what the material was, just that it was composed of those elements, and thankfully was not radioactive. There is debate around whether or not the material even came from the UFO, with skeptics saying that the substance was simply spider webs. This isn't a far-fetched idea, as spiders were known to migrate using parachutes made of their webs, but those who are critical of this spider web theory say that it couldn't be spider webs because of the tests that were conducted. Spider webs are made of a protein fiber. It doesn't contain the elements found in the silvery substance. Unfortunately, after the material was tested at the university, it was subsequently destroyed. As it no longer exists, we won't be able to test it again. So what exactly happened that day? There's little doubt that the witnesses saw something. This was one of the few UFO sightings where there is little doubt at all in the authenticity of the report. With over 10,000 witnesses, this event almost certainly happened. The 1950s were a time of many UFO sightings, with many of them being described in similar ways, either cigar-shaped or saucer-shaped. This sighting fits with those descriptions. Could it have been a secret or perhaps new aircraft that the military was testing? The timing of the flight and the lack of official correspondence that came out about the sighting leaves room for doubt. Why fly a secret craft over a heavily populated city in broad daylight if you wanted to keep it secret? The same can be said for extraterrestrials, even a separate nation's military activity. Why show yourself to thousands? It is unlikely that new information about this encounter will come to light, as it's been almost 60 years since its occurrence. So until the day we get more information, thank you for listening to tonight's story. Tune back in next week as we dive into the world of cryptids, extraterrestrials, and the great unknown. Good night.